Yes. We came across the same problem at the Public Accounts Committee where we were interviewing senior civil servants, and the problem was that there are rules set up that govern the civil servants and their actions. The problem is that breaches of these rules have no consequences. The Minister of Finance is trying to make people think that she's going to bring in new rules to make people be more accountable. No new rules are necessary. Rules have been there for many, many years. The problem is not the absence of rules. The problem is that the rules have no consequences because nobody wants to enforce the penalties for breaking the rules. And that's what the Auditor General was referring to. And we have observed, and I have observed, over the last few years I've been involved with the Public Accounts Committee, that the rules just don't have any consequences because the financial secretary is the person in the civil service who has the authority directly from the Minister of Finance to enforce penalties for breaking rules, in particular for going over your budget. And we all know that's been broken umpteen times, and also for not following proper procedures when it comes to tendering for contracts. And we have seen this many times in the past decade, where the established rules have been broken for tendering contracts, because contracts where there have been no tenders, no bid contracts as they call them in the States. And these actions have caused multiple millions of dollars in overruns. So the overruns have been directly connected to the lack of proper procedure in giving the contracts in the first place. And and the second thing I want to talk about is that I guess the Cabinet Secretary in his remarks was saying that any sort of meting out of punishment has to be done in private. Well, this to me is total nonsense, right? This is the public's money, and if there have been rules that have been breached, the public needs to see that justice is done. There's no sense of justice being done and it can't be seen to be done. So when we're dealing with the public's money, the whole idea of things being done in secret just flies against all kind of common sense and all rules of fairness. So we don't subscribe to what the Cabinet Secretary said, that these things have to be done in secret. That's a nonsense. Bermudians want to see that people who have broken the rules get their just desserts, and they want to see it done. They don't want anything to be done behind closed doors.
Moniz?
Yeah, and my position is, I agree with my colleague Bob Richards completely, and I would even take it broader. There seems to be a culture in this government of a lack of accountability. This government can't even buy light bulbs, honestly. We have this ridiculous fiasco with installing light bulbs, and again it looks like it was a contract to somebody's buddy, and of course it's a complete waste of money. And what does the Premier do? The Premier intervenes to get the bad light bulbs taken out and the good light bulbs put in back. And who pays and pays and pays? The public pays through its nose on each occasion. And who's accountable? Nobody's accountable. The minister's not accountable. The contractor's not accountable. And we see this. It's the story of the Titanic was sinking and the band played on. Recently we've had the Premier's down in Washington partying away with her women's group. We had Derek Burgess off in England in the Conservative Party conference of all things. This is what our taxpayers' money is going towards. While there's no transparency or accountability in this government, there's no enforcement of the rules, either the financial rules or general orders. I mean, to hear the Cabinet Secretary talk about a protocol of confidentiality is surely a joke. I mean, that's the people's money. People are entitled to know what happened with it, and they're entitled to see those people punished who did wrong, whether they be civil servants or politicians. And what we see now is a new premier passing bits and pieces of legislation such as good governance. We see a lot of talk and we see no action. And I'd like to see action from everyone, and that includes the premier and her cabinet. That includes the Auditor General. I think should be taking much stronger action. I've heard nothing from her for 6 months in terms of action. Although she is saying some encouraging things in the paper, that's not enough. And we really need to end this culture of patronage. To put it nicely, it's political patronage. But at bedrock, there are very corrupt practices going on where people's friends and family are on board the gravy train as Bermuda goes down the tubes.
Recently, there was a court case involving Andre Curtis and the faith-based tourism. He was found not guilty. What are your thoughts on that particular situation and the information that came out of that court case?
It's very interesting. There are a number of items that come out of that court case. One, there was a suggestion that the public prosecution's office really charged under the wrong offenses, that they charged for theft, when really they should have been charged with. He should have been charged with obtaining money by deception. He didn't steal the money. They gave him the money, thinking he was going to do one thing, and he did something else. And there should be outcomes to that. Even though the criminal prosecution failed, there still should be a civil action to recover those funds from Mr. Curtis. But what it laid bare was a culture within the civil service of a complete ignoring of all of the rules, all the financial instructions, all the general orders, and to my view, all of those civil servants should probably be fired. But the question is, they haven't been punished at all. So, if I saw some sort of punishment, I'd think something was going on. But you see nothing happening at all. And then to receive, to get this garbage from the cabinet secretary about protocols of confidentiality, it just, to the man in the street, is just yet another cover-up. But what the Andre Curtis trial really revealed was how rotten this government is, unfortunately. Just how rotten. And of course, fish rots from the head. And once it rots from the top, you see it all down through the lower body of the civil servants, etc. And we have to change that around. And what the present premier is doing is saying, well, I'm putting all this legislation in place for the future. But she said nothing about doing anything about the criminal acts that have happened in the past, all those acts which are culpable acts, which are breaches of financial instructions, breaches of general orders, etc. She's done very little of anything about any of those. So her credibility and the confidence of the public has been eroded severely.
Wrapped up, what would the OBA like to see happen?
Well, I think we need to clean house. You need to go back and investigate all of these allegations of corruption and corrupt practices. You need people being prosecuted. You need people being disciplined. You need the Public Service Commission to come to the table, do their job. The auditors got to really start tabling these reports and putting down some real markers, calling in the police to do forensic investigations. You need a lot of these things. You need to see people being prosecuted. Either that, or we're going to say, well, we were all dreaming in the last 3 or 4 years and everything was really okay. But I don't think that's the case.